Another day at the Riverwalk. It's getting pretty humid out here today. And the subject I'd like to talk about today is, what do you call it? Domesticity, domesticated, or perhaps domestication. Let's call it that. And we're all aware of, we apply the term to animals. Animals are domesticated, farm animals and so on. And talk about farm animals for a moment. Well, we're used to cows, for example, the idea of cows being in a pasture, being outdoors all day, outside, whatever. And that's no longer the case with a lot of these domesticated animals. Now if you want to buy meat and you want it to be pasture, grazed, fed beef or something like that, then, well, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that they let them outside for an hour a day or something? Well, it could be. But at any rate, indigenous people, Aboriginal people, things like that, they were basically not domesticated. We tend to sneer at them, but then, of course, they didn't have all the problems that we have. And people get pretty bent out of shape arguing about how, far we've come and all the progress and everything. But it's funny about this idea of progress because it's not that it's really all that measurable, at least in their terms. When you look at the negative consequences, well, it becomes quite apparent. And it's things like pollution, disease, and so on. So, in the past, you had lots of things like, futurism, world fairs, things like that. People projecting ideas about how grand the future is going to be. Things are going to be futuristic and everything, stuff like that. Very little of it actually came to pass. Usually they're very wrong about it, because what's driving things is not some kind of idealistic utopian concept, but it's basically money, at least at this point. So, now we're on the cusp of entering this age of artificial intelligence, and people are either excited or terrified or both. It's getting discussed everywhere all the time. Oh, we're going into this new era and everything, and it's like, is this progress or what exactly is it? Just to back up a sec, progress is supposed to be a process of improvement, but the thing is there's never a goal. You never reach the final, the prize where now everything's wonderful. So it's kind of a word that we put on things like, the invention of the car was progress, and it's like, now you got all, problems with, fossil fuels and burning gasoline all the time, and it's like, well, was that really progress? So anyway, to think about something like progress in terms of so-called, in quotation marks, in 100-year segments. Well, today we have the AI scenario and all that, and, all kinds of crazy ideas about what it will bring. And probably they're all incorrect, because when people try to predict the path of progress, many times it's wrong. So I think an interesting perspective is to go back 100 years. So 100 years ago, it was the Model T and radio, perhaps, things like that. It's like these were the way of the future. They were futuristic at the time. No one had ever seen anything like that. And but today, what does that stuff look like? It's laughable. It's antiquated. It's ridiculous. And what I'm saying is, 100 years from now, everything we're doing will appear just as ridiculous. So, what exactly is not ridiculous? Well, you and your family at the beach is not ridiculous. Having a good time eating seafood and being in the sun. But anyway, you can only do that a little bit at a time. Get let out of the cage. So you can imagine two scenarios. It's like one is that you're not domesticated. You're essentially, well, they would say wild, you know. But but at any rate, whatever you do, you have true freedom of choice. And then on the other hand, you're a captive. You're in a cage, in a room, indoors, pushing buttons and so on, in order to be able to eat. And that is not progress. That is basically imprisonment, enslavement. So we take these things for granted. Hold on. You know that this is the way things are and we're doing things the right way and so on. But of course we don't have any other perspective usually. So, you know, it's funny. The other day I heard someone talking about a city and they said, oh, this is such a beautiful, beautiful city. It's like, well, what exactly does that mean? So, hi. Does it mean that the architecture is beautiful in some sort of artistic way and that the majority of people like it? You know, not like it's neo-impressionism or something like that. You know, that the angles and the forms are pleasing to the eye. Not like this, right? Or is it just simply some kind of weird propaganda? You know, it's like, well, here we are, and, you know, beautiful city. But you hear propaganda like this a good bit in our culture, sticking labels on things like that. You know, another thing, this is a pretty touch. Hi, you okay?
Yeah, I'm just driving.
Well, it was interesting. Guy riding a bike smoking a cigarette. I don't think I've ever seen that, but good for him. Anyway, getting back to sort of cultural, not propaganda necessarily, but deception. You know, we have this big thing now, and I have all kinds of sympathy for veterans, military veterans, but there's this, you know, idea circulating that they served our country, and it's like, well, did they serve you and I, or did they serve the military-industrial complex? Well, that's really what they did. They probably got sucked into the system because they didn't have a lot of choices in their lives, and then they get chewed up, spat out, they don't get taken care of. I'm like, yeah, it's tragic, but let's not lie about it, and let's not use their stories to try to make it seem like they're protecting us or something, because it's America that's doing all the wars and the aggression and messing around with other countries and things like that. We're the number one problem in the world militarily. So anyway, but that's a similar kind of line that you hear trotted out that is basically not true. So anyway, where was I? Animals in cages, us in cages, not knowing the difference because we've always been in there, looking at our man-made, you know, environment and thinking that it's beautiful and things like that. And it's like, well, it's all you've ever known, so what are you going to say about it? Some people will say it's beautiful. Some people will say it's a blight. Some people will say that they do or don't like certain, you know, structures or something like that. But anyway, I think I've about covered it for today. And the question is, you know, what do we do about this? What can be done, if anything? And I'm afraid what's happening right now with media is that media is keeping people divided. So it tends to present negative, you know, scary scenarios, whether it's, you know, whatever, on the news stories or political stuff, things like that. And it's divisive, it's dividing people into these little groups, these little cults, clans. And that ensures really that the system will go on, and that the powers that be will be able to do whatever the heck they want, and people will come last. Basically, their profits will come first. So okay, more people coming, so I'll stop it for now. Adios.